Do we have the prudential guidelines already, or is this still in the pipeline?
Yeah, the act has just been signed. I'm not sure it's been gazetted yet. I'm aware that as soon as it's gazetted, a process of stakeholder engagement would commence, with the industry, with the stock exchange, with the exchange commission, with all the stakeholders, to agree on the tone and scope and reach of the prudential guidelines to be adopted to drive this process.
Okay, Ogbonna, let me come to you. Dr. Ray was talking about being careful in where you put the monies of these workers who have labored for years to save them and having to sacrifice as much, to be able to achieve that. If I may ask you, what sectors do you think may be regarded safe to put in this money? Because you was talking about you have to know where you're going to put this money, know the history of the activities in those areas. So what sectors would you recommend?
I always recommend for anybody to move from the known to the unknown, because going from the unknown, you don't know what you're going to meet there. And then the president also made it clear that we have to protect these funds because of the people that these funds belong to in his speech. So we have to actually look at areas like the railway. The railway is one area that we must consider so well, because it's an area that's untapped as far as this country is concerned. So if you look at the railway, that's what I was talking about, the stakeholders coming together, because as far as I'm concerned, as it is right now, it's just a foundation have been laid. So we have to start building on those foundations. The foundation is quite okay, but the stakeholders must come together so that we begin to look at, do our cost-benefit analysis, do our business plan, and see those areas that will be good. Like I mentioned, the railway, then the power infrastructure, which is an area that the investment that has to go into power infrastructure is not conclusive. We've not concluded in it. We're still in we have not gone to the green power area, providing like solar energy, alternative kind of provision of power to our country. So railways, power infrastructure. Then the road infrastructure, we can't say anything about it until we begin to talk about having tolls in our country. Because unless you have tolls in your country, you can't invest in like the road infrastructure. So these are a few of them, and then as we go on, we can also mention a few more.
Now I want to touch on the railway. This morning in the headlines we saw the fact that railway workers are planning to down tools owing to not too good welfare for them, and they didn't have a place to rest and all of that. What do you think should be done? Before we begin to invest, Dr. Oye, I want to come to you. Before we begin to invest in areas like the railway, what groundwork should we do? Because it's not just enough for you to just say you want to put money in a particular sector. It has to work for us to get results. What can be done to ensure that everyone involved, the workers, the leader of the workers' union, the leaders of the union, they're all involved and all carried along to ensure that the investment does not go down the drain?
Yeah, for railway, the issues with railway, it's not peculiar to railway. It's peculiar to the transport sector. All over the world, the transport services sector is by far the most subsidized service sector in the world. Second, perhaps only to audiovisuals, because of the money they give to Hollywood and movie production. So given the amount of subsidies you require to sustain even private sector operators, you then realize that except you've got a framework for state aid that guarantees that even if you have a private sector person investing in the railway, there are certain commitments like access roads, electricity and all of that the government would need to provide. So for me, for railway, it's not just the fiscal money you need a more comprehensive policy framework to ensure that whatever approach you adopt, be it public or be it private, the government gives a level of comfort to the investors, given the amount of money you would require to invest to get the railways up and running.
Okay, still talking about areas to invest. I'm just very curious about what can be done to ensure that we invest properly. Let's look at the issue of the power sector. You mentioned solar energy. Not much has been done in that direction. A few state governments are beginning to look towards the direction of solar. How do you think we can fast-track development in the power sector, especially in the areas that we have not tapped yet?
Because every other person that have actually come into the power sector investment sphere have always complained about the investment, the volume. It's actually capital intensive. And now looking at the kind of funds that we have seen that exist in the pool of the pension fund, if we have enough capital, because it's clearer now that these are areas that you can actually put in your money, and then the monies are all therefore, there'll be return on investment. So going forward, I think the ability for those, since we already have different segments where we require investment, like the generation, the transmission, and then the transmission, So if we must get, you see, since we have not, done so much in those areas, there are still, areas where people can actually put in funds in. So if we must sit down and look at these areas, what needs to be done? Because until you do your, complete feasibility and then business plan, you can't say exactly these are the things that I need to put in. But obviously, it looks very lucrative if the kind of investment flow that we have seen in that direction actually exists. And then the gap that existed, because everybody needs power. So, and then the government have actually made their commitment towards making sure that the power sector works.
Now, Dr. Owe, do you think we have the expertise in this area? Still talking about the solar infrastructure, solar energy, as the case may be. Do we have enough human development capacity to be able to handle areas we're very new to in this part of the world?
No, I think for project finance, you need to develop competences. And I don't think that is peculiar to just power generation. I think for the entire spectrum of infrastructure finance, be it housing, be it transportation, be it water, be it energy, we need to develop competence. And I'm hoping that given the new mandate, in the Pension Act, the Pension Reform Act, that says you can now invest in real estate and invest in infrastructure, we hope to see a series of capacity building programs for, investment advisors, guys who structure deals. Another good thing I forgot to mention was in the new Pension Act, the law now says that for people who put in their money in the RSAs, their retirement savings account, you can use part of that to purchase your own home as equity. So it's also a good way of kickstarting
mortgage financing. We'll look at that when we come back from this break. I'm sorry, I have to cut in there. Mortgage financing is a very interesting topic as well. We've been talking about infrastructure financing, and our guests have been Dr. S.C. Owe, is the Associate Fellow at the Center for Infrastructure Policy Regulation and Advancement, and also Ogbonna Okoko is the country representative of the International Institute for Investment Promotion, and we have been looking at infrastructure financing. We'll continue this discussion after the break.